Warlocks, Crown of Tempest has reigned supreme for quite a long time when it came to Arc. If you wanted to go with an Arc build that wasn't just equip Geomags, then you basically went with Crown. The issue with Crown is that you needed to constantly keep up conduction times ×3 the entire time. That's a tongue twister. Otherwise, your energy gains would dramatically slow down, and then you would just need to sit there and wait. But in comes a new challenger in Fallen Sunstar, where Ionic Traces give more energy, move faster, and allies gain some energy whenever you pick up an Ionic Trace. This, when combined with some of the fragments available, is going to generate giant chunks of energy more or less every single time you kill something with an ability, which will be quite often. In today's build video, we're going to use Fallen Sunstar to create the ability spamming machine that I think Arc Warlocks have always had the potential to become. What aspects are we going with? Well, depends on the kind of content that you're doing. If you're doing stuff that is at or below your level, even slightly above your level, I think Lightning Surge and Electrostatic Mind are the way to go. Arc Soul is plenty viable in lower end content if you really want to use it, but Lightning Surge to me is more fun, and lower end content allows for more aggression. The combo of Lightning Surge jolting targets and then you getting Ionic Traces from those jolted targets means you're going to be replenishing the majority of your energy from every melee attack that you do that kills a target. If you don't end up killing your targets with the melee, you can just kill them with whatever you want and still get the Ionic Trace anyway. But what makes Arc Soul more intriguing with Electrostatic Mind is that with Electrostatic Mind, every Ionic Trace you collect amplifies you, which means your Arc Souls will get supercharged, and they'll be in that state the majority of the time. We're not going to have that on-command jolt with Lightning Surge, but we can still go heavy into jolt if we want with a fragment or even a perk, and we can go heavy into blinding effects to get Electrostatic Mind to proc that way, since you'll get Ionic Traces with kills on blinded targets as well as jolted ones. For now, let's stick with Electrostatic Mind, and we'll talk about a blinding build later in the video. For Fragments, we want to continue generating as much ability energy as possible, but you do have some freedom here. For starters, we're going to include Spark of Ions, which gets you an Ionic Trace when you kill a jolted target. That plays very well into what we're doing. And Spark of Shock, grenades will jolt targets. That combos nicely with both our fragment and aspects that we have right now. From here, things open up a bit. Spark of Resistance and Recharge both make sense, but for Resistance, I think if you're playing easy content, you won't need it. And Recharge to me felt redundant in terms of the energy gains because I was already getting so much. Magnitude, your lingering arc nades last longer, I think is a safe bet. I messed around with Storm Grenade and it just helped jolt some extra targets here and there if things wandered around. But most of the time your Storm Nade is just going to kill stuff outright. Spark of Discharge, Arc Weapon Final Blows have a chance to make a trace. That's not too bad if you're using Arc Weapons. I think this will work more for a blinding setup though. Spark of Amplitude is a great choice here. You should be amplified almost all the time, and rapid kills are not going to be a huge issue for you, making you an orb of power spamming machine. So, to start, try Spark of Ions, Shock, Magnitude, and Amplitude. If you find that you're not really feeling the effects of something like Magnitude, you can swap it for something else. Maybe you're a Spark of Frequency player where you go in, you melee, and then you get that fast reload for free. Maybe you're trying to build up your melee damage and you go Spark of Feedback. It's very, very flexible. This brings us to stats. I'm leaning super heavy into Discipline and Strength. Ionic Traces are good, but you're going to want fast cooldowns to supplement this build, as it's not a guarantee that you're going to get all of your ability energy back 100% of the time. Something can go wrong in these chains, and you want that extra energy to supplement. After that, I'd say 6 or 7 resilience and around the same recovery is fine for your average piece of content. You could probably even go lower resilience. The stakes are pretty low, and you're not really going to be in danger too much. And if you die, you just respawn. Like, it's not a big deal. If you explore some endgame stuff and still want to stay on Lightning Surge, I'd probably be looking at buffing my resilience as much as possible while also having as high recovery as I can, but your rifts will likely do a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to healing. Mod-wise, there's a good amount to explore. If you just want to go very basic, I'm talking about just getting ability energy as much as possible, then I think something like Melee Wellmaker, Elemental Ordnance, Bountiful Wells, Well of Striking, and then like maybe another Well of Striking or a Well of Ions is going to be just fine. Font of Might is an option as well if you're using arc weapons. This focuses on well generation to bolster those ionic traces in case they don't end up being enough to get you all of your energy, and it makes it so you don't need maybe as much discipline and strength. If you want to push heavier into melee or grenade, that's fine. You can just swap out the melee Wellmaker for elemental ordnance or vice versa. If you want to try out an energy converter build based on Charged with Light so that you can be spamming your super a lot, you would go charged up, supercharged, energy converter, and then taking charge to combo with Spark of Amplitude, and then maybe stacks on stacks to get to 5 stacks much faster. Throw on 1 or 2 harmonic siphon mods into your helmet to make this even easier to make happen. Considering how Stormcaller supers are right now, though, I'm not in a huge hurry to get this rolling, although we will address that in a moment with one of the seasonal mods. You're going to be chaining your abilities so often that you might as well be in a near permanent state of Storm Trance anyway. Alternatively, we could try out Striking Light, where melee kills spawn an Orb of Power for your teammates, and it consumes 1 stack of Charged with Light, boosting your orb generation even more. Also, you would gain damage resistance while sprinting from Striking Light, which you'll be doing a lot. From here, I enjoyed going Elemental Charge, Melee Wellmaker ×2, and Bountiful Wells with Striking Light just as a starter setup, just to get yourself going. A Lightning Surge will net you 2 Elemental Wells, which gets you 2 charge. You go up, you punch a couple of things, or simply wait for your next Lightning Surge cooldown, and you will make many, many orbs for your team. But, you ask, what about Lightning Strikes Twice and Trace Evidence? The seasonal mods. Shouldn't those go somewhere? Well, Trace Evidence does not appear to be working. I could just be dumb or something, very likely. But after asking multiple people, I think it's not working or it's bugged. It's not giving Ionic Traces on kill against an arc debuffed target. In fact, the only time I get anything to happen is when I blind something with a grenade and then I shoot it, not kill it, just shoot it, and then that's when I get the trace to spawn. So I don't know what's really going on here, but you're going to be spawning Ionic Traces like wild anyway, and if you're not using blinding stuff, then I'm not sure this mod is even going to do anything for you. Which leads us to Lightning Strikes Twice, which is not nearly as strong as I was hoping for. How we went from Classy Restoration to this, I don't know. Quick example here, Tier 7 Flashbang Grenade on the Warlock, normally 51-second cooldown. With Lightning Strikes Twice, that cooldown is now 47 seconds, whoop-de-freaking-do. If I kill something, it does get shorter because the timer refreshes, and it gets longer, and it definitely does make some level of a difference. But I also played without it, and everything felt fine without it. This means that you could use the Thunderous Retort mod to make your Arc Supers actually deal some damage, since it procs on being amplified as well as being low HP. Arc Warlock Supers, not great right now, but this mod would allow you to bring them up to pretty decent levels without really sacrificing anything from the main build. So why do I like this build? It lets you become the arc ability spamming Warlock that I've wanted to become without having to rely on a very strict timer to adhere to. It's a build that is also quite usable in content that has other people in it. Crown of Tempest is much more a solo content exotic. You need all of the kills and you need them at really specific times to constantly chain your energy. And I have tried a quick Crown build and I didn't really like it. With this build, energy comes in much bigger chunks and doesn't require nearly as strong of a commitment, nor does it require this hyper focus that Crown of Tempest required. You just get to use your abilities, and as long as you're hitting something with them, you should be all right. Breaking up this build in at-level content was pretty darn good, as you might expect. I did some Legend Lost Sectors, so I'm about plus 10 on the levels over the Lost Sector. My abilities were wiping out red bar enemies with no issues. They were doing a decent chunk of damage to champions, but I usually had to finish them off with weapons, which was fine. I still had to play somewhat cautiously as I could still die, especially without 100 resilience, but after a couple practice runs, it's cruising. The build was working exactly how I wanted it to be working without the pressure of knowing that there's a timer ticking down, and that if I miss it, the whole combo gets ruined. As long as I picked my targets wisely, it was smooth. I tried this build in some Master solo content. I'm about 20 levels under in this footage, and you know, the build still holds its own, although I am rocking 100 resilience here to make sure I have a chance at staying alive. Beefier targets, though, are unfortunately just going to eat your abilities like they are nothing. You can use both your grenade and your melee, jolt them and plank at them, but I was lucky to do a third of their health bar with 2 abilities, and getting up close for a lightning surge usually ended up being not too great of an idea. This is where the build basically falls off of a cliff. A situation like this where you have 2 or 3 beefy champion-like targets, you gotta just whittle them down to get them into grenade and melee kill range, and then maybe you can kind of get back rolling again. I would basically not bother using my abilities on enemies that are this high level above me unless I was just trying to jolt them. I would not be using them for damage, really whatsoever. I would just save them for enemies that I know I could kill, and thus continue my chain combo. Regular trash mob enemies were still dying to my abilities, which is the main point of the build. The build isn't a single target damage kind of build. The whole point is to just keep chaining off of smaller enemies. My hypothesis held true when I tried some group content, Master Nightfall at around 15 levels under. Although Arcburn was on, so not a whole lot I can really do about that. But I was very reliably killing junk enemies with my abilities. I think I would without the burn as well, based on some other things that I was doing. And the Amplify speed boost definitely helped me get out of danger much more than I was anticipating. I was quite impressed with that. Believe it or not, the struggle wasn't killing things or comboing out, but rather making sure that my ionic traces actually traced to me. I kept running around all over the place, and the traces are fast, but you can outrun them. Just something to keep in mind. While this build was fun in terms of the speed department and killing junk enemies, when it came to bigger stuff, the most I felt I could do was just spam what I could on these targets and then go to my weapons while my ability cooldowns very slowly ticked back. I haven't even spoken about Voltshot yet, which is kill clip, but instead of a damage bonus, you jolt the next target you hit. If you then kill that target, well, that's a lot of ionic trace power coming right to you, and you can chain this basically non-stop. This is an incredible perk for this build. Voltshot can only be found on the Season 18 Scout, Sidearm, and Linear Fusion. For the most part, you'll probably be using the Scout in Master content, especially Season 18 when we have Anti-Barrier Scout, but the Sidearm is very, very plausible to use in basically every other piece of content. This does prevent us from using the Blinding build since we won't have an Arc special weapon, but after what I'm about to say, that won't end up being much of an issue. So I mentioned the Blinding build. Let's venture into that a little bit more. I'm going to keep things short because I just wasn't very impressed with this in endgame, at least in the Master Strike that I was testing in. I went to Arc Soul instead of Lightning Surge since I was going to be more focused on using a special weapon, which happened to be a grenade launcher, although it definitely was not the best roll that I could have been using. I also tried a Fusion and also was not impressed. I did also just try staying on Lightning Surge, and to be honest, I don't think it makes a difference which one you end up using. Just go with whichever one you're more comfortable with. Fragment-wise, I went with Beacons and Brilliance to focus all of my efforts into Blinding, and then Shock and Ion to, round things out, keep it simple. So first, solo Master content, aka Master Lost Sectors. These places are mostly filled with champions, and as we know, champions cannot be blinded. It's also much harder to get amplified because rapid kills don't come as quickly, and more often than not, by the time I was amplified, I was already moving on to the next group of enemies. Also, enemies just tend to spread out a lot here, so the blinding explosion doesn't really do a lot. Most generic enemies still go down pretty easy though, and the amount of times I really felt like the blinding aspect was important was zero. Pretty much zero. Didn't matter what I was using either, grenade launcher, fusion. They also tear through ammo really quickly, and anything bigger than a red bar is going to take multiple shots to kill. 2, 3, 4, 5 shots to kill. When you can get the blinding effect to happen, it's cool, but I feel like this is a cut the middleman situation. Use a blinding grenade launcher to get the effect immediately, or just kill your enemies outright instead of going through all the effort to make that blind actually happen. After trying it in a Master Lightblade with Arc Burn with a GL and a Fusion, still not impressed. In fact, the amount of times I feel like I even blinded something in a full run was maybe once, twice. However, I do feel like this is in small part the fault of the Lightblade strike itself, as there are only a couple of places where you even have decent opportunities to get to a point where you can blind something via killing a target with a special arc weapon while you're also amplified. I would recommend lightning surging a small group of enemies and then just go around and try and kill as much stuff that is next to other stuff as possible in order to blind them. You could also use the fragment that allows you to get amplified on finisher. However, to all of what I just said, there are only a very small handful of targets that even need to be blinded in the first place, in my eyes. If you're the kind of player who wishes to blind weak enemies, you like running with a blind grenade launcher, you're just way better off running that blinding grenade launcher and not trying to make this build work. If you're the kind of player who would just rather kill those weaker enemies outright, you're probably not going to need to use this build because you're just going to be killing things outright. In strikes with a bit more enemy density or strikes where there are more opportunities to make this blinding effect happen, obviously it'll be better. But given that there aren't that many strikes with very dense enemy placement, I'm skeptical of how good this is, at least without experiencing it in more strikes or trying some other weapon combinations. But you know what's also going to work? Just using the ability-based build and killing stuff outright. Overall, I really have fun with this build in at-level content, the movement, the ability spam, the speed. It's really satisfying to use, and the new exotic helm really makes it all possible. You could replace Fallen Sunstar with Crown if you want, but if you want the full synergy of the build to be working very well, I think you need Fallen Sunstar. Also, you can continue to use this build outside of this season, as it does not rely on any seasonal artifact mods, which is even better. Although the mods this season, you know, they're not the worst, but they're not on the level of the mods from Season 17. When it came to very endgame stuff, though, I was not as impressed with stuff like blinding, as I think it takes a bit too long to kind of rev that engine, and or you're going to be in places where blinding isn't really that effective at all. Feel free to share some of your experiences with this helm, other arc builds you've been using, maybe you've been using a build like this already. Let me know how you're feeling. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you next time.